What is going on here? Yes, Conrad and Kelly, what is going on here? Um, my name is Shin, and I haven't streamed in like 3 to 4 months at least, maybe even longer. And hello, hello, hello. I'm glad that people are here. Um, to my first stream in a while. I think my last stream I did maybe was the last Catan class. I was asked to talk about a Catan class, and you've maybe seen the announcement. And I think talking about placements and all the stuff, other people can do that a bit better. So I want to talk about being an alpha male or beta male today. What that means, you'll find out soon. I prepared a big presentation because that's what I can do. That's how I always did. Yes, that's a nice emoji, can you see? So let's start. For the few people, like, I'm not sure how many people are in here, but for the few people who don't know me, I made a small introduction for myself. You'll see my face, but there's my face a bit bigger. Who I am and why do I teach this Catan class? Currently, I'm in Division 2 of Catan Championships, so yeah. I'm not playing Division 1 as much, so maybe some people don't know me anymore. But I played a lot of King of Catan back in the days when King of Catan was the big server. I tried to win games. Even in Catan Champs, I did a 11 out of 15 win streak, which was the best for some time, but it's not anymore. I won a few other things, and I lost to Plate of Fish, and I was one of the organizers of the Settler series. My opinion, one of the best Catan experiences you could ever have. Comzender was in here, was also part of that. So how high I'm in this picture? I'm not that high. I just had a few beers. So we have this. We have a big art exhibition where I'm living, and we just were sitting outside drinking a few cocktails. I think that picture just encapsulates how I am. Yes. Prost, you say in Germany. I'll have a beer. So, Kam asked me to make a Catan class today. What do we talk about? We talk about what Catan is. So, what is Catan in a nutshell? For me, Catan in a nutshell for a lot of people seems like the super competitive, super aggressive kind of game, right? So, you play a game in these online servers, and especially if it's a competitive game, and like the King of Catan Premier League and Catan Championship here for us in Division 1, especially if it's like a semi or final one, it feels like super rough and super competitive. But there is a lot more to Catan, right? Yes, I also love being nostalgic. And I wanna look a bit deeper into what Catan is and also try to teach you a bit how I think learning about what Catan is and what players are playing Catan, how to play better against these players. So, how do we play Catan is a question for me here. So, Catan is a social game. What a surprise, right? We all know that Catan is a social game. Catan is played with 4 players, sometimes 3. I think online we don't see many 3-player games. If you go like to offline tournaments, you sometimes see the 3-player games. And trading is an integral part of Catan. So I know there are some tournaments and some people who like to play no talk, no trade games and who just have more fun not talking a lot. But most of the games you play, here, especially here in Catan Championships, will be talking games. It's either through voice chat or through text chat. Even in offline Catan, you need to talk. So, talking and trading is an integral part of the game. So, I think that placements and like buying development cards, all that stuff is known a lot about. If you talk to any of the players who are in here, any of the players in Catan Championship, most people know, hey, getting development cards is good, getting production is good, you don't place on 11, 12 and all that stuff, But what about like our state of mind, is how I call it. As people, our performance, of course, is kind of dependent on how we feel. I guess every one of you had like these games where they feel bad and didn't play optimally, or like when you play a few games in a row and want to win really badly and then you play worse. So mental state is really, really important for Catan. And Another thing that is super important, in my opinion, that lying is allowed. Like, lying is a bit frowned upon, at least in the online scene, but lying is still allowed, at least. So you can lie in Catan. It does have some impact on your future games, especially in Catan Championship, but it is something you can do. So, what does it mean for all of us and for how we play Catan? Um, we need to set a goal first when playing Catan. So everyone tries to search for different things. Some people like to play. I have a few quotes in here that I like from a lot of people, like the Dilly King, Awesome Angron, even Mawam King. So we have people who like playing competitive, like Agron's post here is a good example for that. We also have people who just love playing for fun. We have people who like friendly games. We have people who love to create chaos. Some games I'm competitive and some I'm super fun, but that also means that players play differently, right? You have some players who always want to win every game, and you have other people who want to learn every game. So how can we kind of take advantage of that? That is the goal of this class, of this talk that I do, of the presentation. So I want to try to see, okay, these people, everyone has a different goal in mind. Everyone plays, therefore, a bit differently. And we know that some people like to play for the longest route, some people like to play more for like the largest army. But that is already talked about a lot. But what about people who have like, different things that they think? So how can I use my social skills, sorry for England, to take advantage of my opponents? So we have a lot of different player types. I know, Swoot, you will rewatch this game, so hello, I put one of you too. So I just look at Catan Championships. It's like well-known players. People everyone knows in Catan Championships that most of you have played against. And I guess you could say that, okay, maybe you haven't played against me. I just put my face, like my profile picture in here because it's my class. So every one of these players has different playstyles, right? For example, you have Joshua Wright, who's known to be like a really dominant person on the table, who loves to talk, makes trades, try to take advantage of being the dominant guy. He even like posted something today in the chat, if you want to go back into the Catan Champ chat. Then we have Kelly C, who's more like a chaotic person. He plays way differently than a lot of people, still sees a lot of results. Then we have people like Papa Chulo, who's down there, who's more like, I would say, someone who doesn't talk that much, who's more like the nice guy on the table. And so you have like all these different kinds of players who all play differently. And in my opinion, it is an essential way, especially if you want to be successful in the higher echelons of Catan, like for example Catan Championships Division 1, to know how to play against these kind of players and different player types. So the third thing is, I think we need to categorize these players, like I did. We have always in mind, hey, ABH is this kind of guy. Sachin is this kind of player. Kelly C is this kind of player. Why do we need to categorize? Thank you, Sunset. So the thing is right now that if we just look at, of course, every player plays differently. We have Sunset in here. Plays differently than someone else who you may categorize in the same group. So, for example, I often categorized the players E-Box and Rayman in the same group, even though they do play differently and have different play styles. And that is because the world is just too complex for all of us, right? We kind of need to have categories to live in the world. Without categorizing, using stereotypes, we just can't go on with our lives. Just imagine you need to have like a profile for every player. I know Real Create had that. Real Create has like notes on every player, but I don't think that it's feasible for most of us. So we try to categorize. Let's do that today. This is something how I categorize players. So that is highly subjective. You can always choose different categories, different styles, different things you look at a player. But for me, these are the things I look at a player. I look, if if the player is dominant on the table or not dominant. I look at the player skill, of course, as it's a good player, as it's a less experienced players. I look at the communication skills. How good do they communicate? Do they like communicating? I look at self-confidence, because I think that's also a big thing in Catan. We'll go into that a bit later. I look at mental strength, which I kind of have like, okay, is this person rattled up easily? And I look at the aggression factor, that just, is this person more an aggressive type or not an aggressive type? Can't really see any one of you because the cat is in front of the screen, but let's just roll with it. And now I want to talk about all these type of players and want to see how we can maybe use these playing styles to our advantage. So, what does alpha mean? So, the class was called yes, I'm no Shazzy, it's not bad. So the class was called How to Be an Alpha at Catan, so I needed to make a slide like that. Afterwards I thought maybe I want to talk it a bit more deeply and not that only trolly. But if you want to have it like super easy, you have the alpha Catan player, the beta Catan player. You have Shazang in this chat right now is saying low dominance, low skill, low communication, so he would be kind of the beta player. The difference to like someone who's an alpha player, The alpha player is always dominant on the table, they have a lot of skills, they're great at communicating, high self-confidence, and they always know what they want. Is that something you should strive for or not? Is also something I want to look at today. And what is the beta player? So I googled what beta is, and I also was called beta before, so that's the only thing I know about that. So what does beta mean? So being a beta means that you behave in a way to please others in a way that does not benefit yourself. So for example, in the Catan sense, hey, I trade someone 3 ore for sheep, even though the sheep doesn't help me at all. And hello Don. You also, being a beta means that maybe your skill is at best mediocre, you're better communicating, you don't believe in yourself, blah blah blah, all this stuff, And is it bad to be this beta in Catan? And is it so easy to say there's an alpha person or there's a beta person? And I ask myself this one. You say, are you kidding me? With my nice slide. It is not that easy in Catan. Yeah, of course, it's also not easy in society. Say it's A is a beta guy, B is an alpha guy or girl or woman, whatever. I mean, Shazzy, of course, is super alpha. We all know that. But still, all these categories help us learn a bit on how to approach playing against these different players, right? And yet these slides were epic. That's the reason I also wanted to keep them in. I wanted also to mock Mao, who's not playing Catan anymore. I mean, he is presumably. But now comes the interesting part. If there are people who want to learn from how I approach Catan, how I approach playing Catan, you can now start learning from me. So, I now want to talk about people who have different play styles, who have different ideas on how to play, and afterwards want to tell you how I think you can beat them. My opinion. So, say some people love to assert dominance in a table. So I call it some also manipulation. You see, I think you need to cut the longest road here, else the game is over. We all have seen that, right? People who try to manipulate people, try to sometimes even coerce people to do something. I mean, here's an example. That's not the best one. You also have like super weird route cutoffs. You have, hey, you need to give me this so I can fight for longest route and stuff. I would say, that's my opinion, not sure people in the chat see that a lot of these strong players tried at least to use this play style to take advantage of the, I would say, not as experienced players, especially in the online sense. For example, in Germany, if you talk about offline players, it's totally different. But here, from what I have learned, sometimes getting win conditions or winning conditions, how Mr. Bolivimo called it, is always pretty tough. Because these players always try to make sure that someone else is fighting you for your condition. So if you have the longest road, they will just, hey, you need to take the longest road. No, you need to be my route badge, in a sense. I also think these kind of players get blocked a bit more often because they're so dominant. People think they're a threat because showing the dominance on the table kind of makes you a bigger threat, talking a lot, at least from my experience. How do we beat these kind of players? How do we beat these kind of players? It's always a question I've asked myself, because I always thought these kind of players are the most strong ones, most difficult ones to beat. We had some players on my slide in the beginning who I would deem a strong and dominant player. So I have a Catan's thing. So it's an idea. Don't listen to my placement advice. I just want to say. But now you need to place here as a white player. You have different options, right? If you, not sure if you see yes, I think you can see my mouse. So no, as a white player, a lot of placements were set. You can go on the 6-9-3 spot to get like good production. You can maybe go on the 9-10-11 spot to get all resources. You can go on the 6-3-11 spot because that's like a big OV cheap spot. This is so I think this board was also Chopper. This is a board from Chopper, and I stole that because I really like the discussion. So most people would take the 6-9-3 spot here, and some people said wait, but maybe 6-3-11 spot is a bit better because then you're not reliant on trading. You're like self-sufficient because you can buy a lot of development cards. You maybe can trade your brick away. You just need to get like 1 or 2 settlement spots. You're not racing anyone to the wheat port, not racing anyone to the 8 ore. So you're kind of not in need to get dominated, how I would call it. I mean, if you look at this one, I think picking between 6-9-3 and 6-3-11 is often player preference. It is what do you like more, is how do you like to play. Even like 9-10-11 can be playable. But it's also what people often don't do is look at the table and see who am I playing against. What happens if I take 6-9-3? I get a lot of wood. Can I trade that somehow? I don't have that much wheat. Does the 10 wheat gets blocked a lot? It is a table where people block the 8 ore. And I think if you play against like super dominant player, it can happen that someone blocks the 8 ore. It can happen that maybe someone races you and blue cuts you off to the 8 ore, because that's just something that can happen. Something I've also learned from Shazzy, who was in here a while ago, is against dominant player, it's sometimes a good thing to be in the donation zone or the rash zone. No one knows that guy anymore, but he often took like setup that were not super good, but he knew that if you have a dominant player on the table, he will trade you something, because in the end, getting traded, because in the end, the board needs to be balanced. So everyone gets like to 8 or 9 points, because that is how a fair game in this competitive Catan thing is. So he took a mediocre spot often to get a bit better result at the end. Oh, hey, Shazzy. If black has 6-9-3 with the wood port, aggressive player may look at them and try to... Yes, for example, that's also something good. And that's why I think like people don't look at the table too much. There are some people who are super, super, super afraid of these, I would call, port setups. If you know someone's afraid of a port setup, I don't think you should take it. In general, I also think that the longest route is a bit weaker against these kind of dominant players, because you will always have a route bit in there. And against dominant players, I think you can also prepare to get blocked a lot if you have a good position, because the dominant player will tell the others, hey, block them. And oftentimes it works. Even if you're unhappy about that, but still oftentimes it works. Hello, badge. So they're also weak dominant player. Didn't want to call anyone out, that's why I used a dog. Dogs are cute. I also call them submissive player. It's weird. I'm not 100% sure how to call these kind of people. But they also exist, right? They exist a lot. These are the people the dominant players often take advantage of. But these players also don't tell anyone what they want to do. They do what they are told to do often. They try to help to prolong the game. They have difficulty saying no to deals and stuff like that. They will also never tell you what to do. You can decide on your own, on a table with these weak dominant players, what you do. The issue is, of course, if they're like weak, like submissive kind of players, these will get utilized by these dominant players. So if you play in Catan championships, after some games you'll know, okay, this kind of guy is someone who may get abused. Or if there's a new player on a table you haven't seen before, this player may get talked into doing something that they won't do. On the other hand, if you're like this not so dominant player, oh yeah, I haven't seen that completely. But Sunset, one of the other examples from my time when I was low, was a Trash Panda playing in the Canadian National Championship when she won. She and that's the last point I have on here. She, I think, on purpose, was super quiet on the table because you had a drunk guy and you had another guy who talked a lot, and everyone just blocked him because he was just talking a lot. And she just said, okay, I'll just play my normal easy game. And these players often then stay under the radar. I had Sachin on the table. I think he's also someone who likes to play under the radar. I know that Popachulo did that a lot. Yes, Donnie, yes. You want to be a submissive player? Maybe also a submissive player. Or how do we beat these kind of players? That's also something I have in here. So you need to be aware of the sneaky win. I have here just a screenshot where someone won with 4 VPs, because these kind of players don't like to talk a lot, and sometimes they're just having 4 VPs, like Blue Tiger always has, or like all these poppers. One thing that helped me a lot against these kind of players is you try to reason your trades. Like, you don't just put up a trade and say, hey, give me that, or you say, hey, you give me the trade, because then I can fight this guy for the largest army, I can fight this guy for the longest road. Or, I think you should give me the trade, because then I'll try to cut this guy off. You give me the trade because that will help you to do X and Y. I nearly said X and Y in German. And I think this is something that can help a lot, giving reasons. This doesn't help against these dominant kind of players, and we'll come to something similar a bit later, but this happens a lot. This helps a lot with these kind of players. And I think an issue often is that you, as a new Catan player, watch a few Delighted videos, watch a few Dandy Drew videos, and then you learn a lot about playing in a good way. They teach you like a lot of good about Catan, but then you maybe have from you, maybe it's a bit difficult to play against the other players. And I think also pick a win condition with less competition is good, because else you get forked by these players because they play route. Yes. So, what is the next one? The next one is experienced players, where I put, of course, myself in here. Don't really like to talk about skill, because I think measuring skill in Catan is super difficult. And of course, we all know there are people who we think have like great skill, like Raymond, for example. There are other people who I'd say are not as experienced, especially like newer players. Some people who come to Division 2, who come from colonist ranked, but still it's difficult to say skill. At least for me, that's where I like to talk about experience instead of skill. Hello, Wolfster. So players with a lot of experience will do less mistakes in general. If you play one of the players who won the Catan Champs Division 1 they will do not many mistakes. And they will know almost every trick. They won't fall for dirty monopolies. I fall for that every time, for example. I'm not sure why. That's something you can always do against me. I'm not that smart. Experienced players also know the meta game. So if you play against someone who plays a lot, they know, okay, right now everyone is trying to go for longest route because we know that large army is good, so I try to go for longest route, but these players also do that. So they're also leveling each other kind of up all the time. And these players are also not easy to manipulate because they just know what's good or not. So I had a really good game in King of Catan where there were Donnie and Stevie Buddha fighting for the longest route, and each other tried to talk each other out of taking the longest route. And it felt a bit annoying because both players were so good that they of course knew I need to take the longest route, we need to fight for it. But against other players that might have worked. But it didn't work because they were both like super experienced. But how do we win against these players? Here I have Raymond, for example. Sometimes playing non-metagame strategies can be effective. So if you look at Kelly C, who was in here for some time, and he will rewatch, at least to be talking good about him, he is known as a player who likes to play chaos. And people look at that, what he's doing, what are you doing? You have you don't know anything about Catan. But maybe it is kind of like a strategy. Because if you play something these people don't know about, it's a bit more difficult to go after that. So there's an example I had in KOC, which was the first big league we had, and I have some statistics, that's why I can talk about it. Everyone thought, largest army is by far the best, but if you look at who won, route strategies were way better. You won more often. I think like nearly 40% of the games were won with route, or 35 or something like that. Army was less than that, 5 to 10% less than that. So yeah, I also think it's often good to become self-sufficient because it will be difficult to get good trades with these kind of players. Self-sufficient, I don't mean you always need all 5 resources, but maybe get a port early on, maybe try to get at least 4 resources, maybe have like a good, don't have 10 points of wood and only 1 point of brick and all that stuff. It's important to really read the board a lot. And like I said, don't be afraid. Even Raymond's just a human. Donnie's just a human. Julia's just a human. Everyone who's playing a lot of Catan and knows a lot about the game, they're just human players. Just play your best. And also, of course, get experience. You need to get experience yourself. So play games. Catan Championships is perfect for that because you can play games all the time. Jump into Division 2 if you're a new player. Jump into Division 1 if you played a bit already. And just play. You'll make a mistake, but you'll come out ahead after that. So there are also less experienced players. So I just look at the Colonist leaderboard. So there are players, you have a 9% win rate, players have 10% win rate, 15% win rate. Don't win that often. These players exist a lot. But how do we win against these kind of players? They do suboptimal moves, right? I don't know, Julia. Maybe I think you're good enough. At least when I played you, you seemed like a good player. And you're not a player who has a 9% win rate at least. And you have experience, right? I also talk about experience. Players with less experience tend to value all resources. Yeah, Shazim, you're that one. You're a less experienced player. At least from my experience, especially in offline Catan. Players who don't play a lot. Leonard, okay, I'm sorry. Don't want to expose you. They often try to take all resources. I had an offline game where someone took 5, 9, 10, 4, 11 because they wanted to get ore and brick, and 4, 11 was the only ore brick spot, for example. That is something you need to think about. Gambledor's, by the way, a perfect name. I really like that. You often have these kind of players, these not so good, not experienced players who play unorthodox strategies. Like I said, 4-11, they often like to play port strategies. They place in weird ways. They play on 8-10-3 stuff and so on. Yes, Biaki. I also think no one is a bad player. No one is a bad player. It's always, at least I want to be have good vibes here. And less experienced players will also like fall for tricks more often, right? Guna, wait, who goes to bed now? How do you win against these less experienced players, for example? I don't think you should play sneaky. So against these kind of players, the Kelly C strategy maybe it's not as good. Against these kind of players, we had there was one player who was called Ion, who was like winning against everyone who was not good at Catan because he just knew how to play super consistently. You also try to utilize OV cheap a bit more often. Yes, you also try to trade them for the win. Staying under the radar by buying development cards is good. So when I play offline, I think a lot of the offline players are not as experienced in these online strategies than we are. So if you play these offline players, buying a lot of development cards often makes you less of a threat. If you have like if your settlements down, you're a super threat. If you have a longest route early, you're a super threat. You also need to try to propose trades a lot, I think. And one thing I've seen people often do against less experienced players, in my opinion, is a big mistake, is they try to cut them off, dirty mono them, try to do these, these things that are deemed not fair. If you do that, you will get hated, you will get solo blocked, people will even king make someone else. I know in Catan Championship, you should report this kind of behavior, but it's not always possible. If you play somewhere else, maybe it's allowed or it's not frowned upon. So just play consistently. If you play calm, you can play consistently, for example. I think she's not listening to me, so I can talk bad about her. So the next thing is communication. This kind of goes hand in hand. Yes, Bjarki, I have a story. So I played. Oh, it was a tournament the tournament you organized. The last round, I couldn't go into the top 3 anymore, so it didn't really matter. But I played a girl. I think she was between like 10 and 12 years old, and I needed to cut her off. She took like some kind of spot next to a route where I could extend to a 10-9 weed ore. And I knew I couldn't do it. I knew I couldn't do it, but I still needed to cut her off. And she was so angry at me, she told me she will kill my family after I did that. She solo walked me all the time. Then she rolled 2 12s in a row to get a city, so karma. But yeah, she was super, super unhappy about that. And I think there are like a few players. Bjarki, who's in here, I think he's super experienced with that. There's also Mr. Lassie, who's playing in Catan Championships, who always like... he's kind of my idol in playing offline in Catan because he's so smooth. He just knows what to do and when to be a bad guy, when to be a good guy. Yeah, so... but to go on with where I am, so there are people who are good at communicating. This can mean a lot of different things. Like player who like to use their communication skill, their charisma. Joshua Wright today talked about charisma, and I think that really is a big point of being a Catan player. Try to be a nice guy. There was someone who called me a good table talker, even though I don't think I table talk a lot because I'm a nice guy. People don't hate me. Even that. Often these players are good at stopping trades on other turns. For example, you try to trade someone and then, hey, why do you do that? If you do that, he'll get a city, and then after the city, there's a longer shot, blah, 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 blah. I put in there, these players often seem skillful, but don't have to be skillful. So there are people who can communicate really good, but maybe don't have that much. Should I have killer charisma? Yes, you should have killer charisma to be a good player. Killer charisma. How do we win against these kind of players? So I don't have a board here because I just thought about how do I play against these players. And I think again the under the radar strategy is pretty good here. Because good communicator will always try to point out when you're ahead. So Stevie Buddha, I don't think you'll listen to that, but he's a great communicator. He just knows what to tell people in a way, and he can tell someone that you'll be winning even if you have 3 points and he has 5 points, because he has like a good kind of way to talk and to reason his thoughts. You also always need to believe in yourself, so you need to have good self-confidence if you play against these players, because they will try to question you and they will tell you, hey, you have a city in hand? What would you city? Maybe you should city this spot because this spot gets blocked a lot. So they will just try to talk you into making mistakes. Sometimes it's good, at least from my experience, to question them. So if they talk to someone else or if they talk to you, just ask a question. Because if you ask a smart question, maybe they'll stumble because because they know they're sometimes just talking bullshit just to confuse everyone. What is super important is these kinds of players don't convey too much information, I think, because they will use the information against you. So if you play against someone who's not good at talking, you can maybe say, yes, I have 2 knights, I'm not a threat. That helps. And then this person just does block you. If it's someone who's good at communicating, oh, you have 2 knights, then I make him use one, because maybe he's lying, because he could have already have 2 VPs, and if he has 2 VPs and he's not blocked here, maybe he'll win, you know? Yeah. And one thing I've learned that even helped me is maybe sometimes just don't join voice chat if you're not comfortable. Because joining voice chat with these kind of player, especially if no one else is there, is sometimes difficult. One thing though I've learned is if these kind of good communicators are in voice chat with the other players and you're not in there, you often will lose because they will just talk to each other and they'll play against you. Oftentimes, at least. We call that collusion. Let me get a drink. So, yes. There are also players who are better communicating. I didn't know what to put in here. This was the only slide where I looked like for 10 minutes for a nice looking picture and I didn't find one. So, if you play tournaments, especially if you play like in Division 2, if you're a new player, there are a lot of people who just like to play Catan, who like to click, who don't like to communicate a lot. Sometimes they're also not that good at English. Maybe they like to talk in different languages. Sometimes just don't like to communicate. These players often also don't trade a lot. There's this meme, of course, haha, there's Hippo, who always plays no trade, no talk in Catan community. But even he talks. But there are people who just don't talk at all. And it's difficult to play with these players for all of us, I think, because we've all learned how to play against players and with players who talk a lot. And if you play offline, we have a few offline players in here, I think you will meet these non-talkers way more often, at least in Germany. Not sure how it is in other countries. So, for example, if you want to try to trade some of the longest route because the other player is going to win, this may be difficult. So, table collusion won't happen too often. I had table collusion happen once in an offline German tournament, and one of these players didn't like it. I didn't initiate it because I knew I'd talked to a few Germans before and I know not a lot of people like it, but someone else initiated it. And the third player was super, super angry and made sure that the player who took longest route never won, so someone else won in the end. Also, I think try to take a setup that's not reliant on trading with that particular player. So something that player who just don't trade a lot. I went to an offline tournament some time ago, I think like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and we had like one player just didn't trade at all. I offered them like a trade which was super, super, super good. And for me it was just okay. And I wasn't even winning, and the players just said no. And then next turn ported like 4 ore for a settlement or something like that. It was super weird. Yeah, but this happens. And don't try to make these people talk, because if you try to, they often get angry and block you. That's also something I've learned, unfortunately. And if you want to that is a trick. You want to learn how to win today. That's something I don't advise you to do, but if you want to win, just work together with someone else. because it increases your chances to win by a lot. Now we are 3 out of 6 already. Next one, players with strong self-confidence, right? There are a lot of people who have a strong self-confidence. What does that mean? These players think they're always correct. They are never wrong. This can be annoying after the game, but what does it mean during the game? These players will never listen to advice from other players. So if someone says, hey, yeah, you need to do that. No, I know what I'm doing. I'm 100% right. I know what I'm doing. These players also love to tell everyone what the right move on the table is, even during a game. I had so many games where someone said, oh, you need to do this. Oh, you're so bad. You need to do this and that and this. It is annoying, right? But beside that being annoying, I won't call out anyone besides Mauern King because he's a bad. But yeah, there are people who have this strong self-confidence. Yes, and never interrupt your enemy when they're making a mistake is a good thing. Not sure if I have it on here. So I think trying to be their friend is always a good thing. So if people have strong self-confidence, fighting with them doesn't help. Fighting with them leads to bad things. So I would say Joshua Wright has high self-confidence. And if you fight him, and if you do something that he deems to be unfair to him, he'll show you that you did something unfair. And you'll not in a good time afterwards. But befriending these people on a table may help you, because then they make an enemy of someone else. You don't have to try to reason with these players, because that doesn't amount to anything. And one thing that is super important, so we always talk about card tracking, and I guess someone else in another class in a few weeks will talk about card tracking. But card tracking is difficult. If you want to card track, try to track the card of the players of these players. I call it strong self-confidence, who think they know what they're doing. So there was a game where Loganian played against the Giver, or Loganian got yes, it is Hakuna in this picture. And the other one is, I'm not sure who that is. Maybe it's Shazi. And the Giver gave Loganian 3 trades in a row that all helped Loganian in the end. Because he knew, hey, I need to know what... I know what I want to do, and I will do that. And hello, Julio, I love you. So there's also a player with weak self-confidence who often say, how do I win? I'm sorry, I needed to take this one. These players often don't believe in their skill, therefore will often listen to you when you tell them what to do. There were some players, I don't want to call them out, who were even like successful playing with weak self-confidence. They're often also the non-dominant players. They get easily dominated. So that kind of overlaps, I would say. Kind of overlaps with this non-dominant player we talked about. I would say Griffin is not a player with weak self-confidence, but I just like to quote, how do I win? And how to win against players with bad self-confidence, you'll be like dominant. So if you play against these kind of players, you kind of need to be the dominant person on the table. Because if you do that, you can just... manipulate them in a way. So, and you don't have to be the harsh, aggressive manipulator. So, one of the persons I like to always admire is Rayman. I've talked about him a bit, because no one would say Rayman is an aggressive player. No one would say Rayman is a manipulative player. But he always knows, against these kind of weak-minded players, against these players who are not sure what they want to do, how to say 1 or 2 sentences to make them do something that benefits him. And it's not in a way that makes someone annoyed. He's just super smart about that. Yes, one thing you always need to be aware of, these players may do moves that don't benefit you at the table because other people will tell them what to do. Yes, it is manipulative in a smart way, yes. And I don't tell you to do that because I'm a fun player and I like to have more fun than anything else. But if you want to win and it's only about winning against these low self-confident player, extortion deals work a lot. And that is something that I think goes wrong sometimes in Catan. So can make a small rant before like continuing to talk about the presentation. So if you try to extort someone, um, it works a lot against players who don't know what to do because they're not 100% sure if it's the right thing or wrong thing. And if you're a good communicator, you can tell them, hey, it's the right thing to do. And if people who are strong communicators, like Delighted, play against people who are not as strong, like people in this Discord, it's super easy to extort, right? But if you play against strong players, like often in Catan Championship, these extortion deals don't work as much because people are just smart and they know it's not something you should do. So you can do extortion. I don't hate it as much as other people, but I would say use extortion in a smart way. Make them feel bad. Yes, Julio, that's also a good thing. Make them feel bad. That is something, by the way, that is works super good against me. I hate being the bad guy. I don't want to be the bad guy. I always want to be a fun kind of spirited guy. I now help you to win against me. But yeah, these people often also don't like to cut you off, right? If you say, oh man, don't cut me off, I'm out of the game, I don't want to play like this anymore, then they don't cut you off, and that maybe works, and then you'll win afterwards. And anyone who knows who that person is, who's on my slide, they'll get something, I don't know what yet. Thank you, Popper. I've talked about you before even. The fifth kind of character trait I'd like to talk about Catan players is players with a strong mental state. So these players don't get confused by getting behind or getting cut off early, right? These players also always try to win, no matter how far behind they are. These players are difficult to rattle up. So if you cut them off in the early game, it doesn't matter. Some players may just give up after that. There are like a few players who like even successful, even though they give up a lot. These players oftentimes don't. So how do we win against these players? Third thing, you need to know the building cost. So a route costs a brick and then a wood. A settlement costs brick, wood, grain, and wool. Right? Lumber. I should have said lumber. And clay. I'm sorry. But no. To be honest, just play strong, consistent Catan. So these players are... I like these kind of players personally because it's fun to play against them. Because they always try to strive for the win. Yeah, I like to call them clay and lumber. I'm not sure why. But I also sometimes call sheep cow. Because I don't know why. Don't try to talk too much. These players are not affected by your table talk. So, table talk is effective against people who are a bit weaker minded, I would say. But again, these players, table talking doesn't work too much. They just do what they want. Cutting off these players also are not as effective. Again, some players cutting them off super effective. Again, these are just a normal move. So what I've learned, again, these players who it's often possible to trade with them even in the end game. Because they 100% know what they want to do, they know how they want to win. So for example, I've had a game with someone who said, yes, I can't win anymore except if I take this trade. If I take this trade, I have a 15% chance to win, else you win 100%. If I don't take this trade, you may not win, but then I also have no chance to win. So tracking the cards of these kind of players also may be helpful. What about people with a weak mental state? I found this one online. I thought it's funny. Getting cut off twice, poor blue person. These players tend to be affected by small decisions a lot. They're always these kind of people. Even in Catan Championships, you know who these people are. If you miss a few rounds of dice, you get angry. If you get cut off, you get angry. If you didn't even get the spot in the settlement phase that you wanted, you'll get angry. So these players get angry super fast, even with like these small things. Also, these players can become quite spiteful, so you need to be aware if you cut them off. So how do we win against these kind of players? You plow, just plow, right? I guess so. It depends. So plowing these kind of players and cutting the off helps you a lot, because these players may give up. I had a few players in KOC. There's one player in particular who's played a lot of games in KOC, who was known to just give up and just didn't trade at all with anyone, just play his own game. If you cut that person off, you increase your winning percentage from 25 to 33% all of a sudden. With like one move. So it shouldn't be bad to do that. So you need to be a bit afraid, because some of these players are super spiteful and will solo block you and will make sure you don't win. So sometimes you need to be a bit careful. One thing I say I don't really like, but talking aggressively against these kind of players may be effective, because that may make them confused or angry, and if they're angry, they make more mistakes. That's something, we have a lot of people who like to table talk a lot. And these people don't do it only because they think it's fun or because they think it's a good move, but they want to make people make mistakes, right? We had that say before. And making player make mistakes is a good thing. So, yes. And hello, Ebox. GG. And one thing, I'm not sure if you can do that, but try to play against the player after they've lost a bunch in a row and they make mistakes. Just look into the screenshot chat and see who've lost a bunch in a row and then play against them again. So maybe you'll get lucky and they're angry and play bad. The last one, is someone aggressive or not? The last one, at least for me, for a Catan player. Aggressive player does yell in voice chat or at the table, can get quite annoying. They always try to manipulate the competition openly, so everyone knows they want to do that. And they also try to talk down your trades. And you know how these people are, right? I think everyone knows these kind of players. How to win against these players? It's both farmers. It's a Catan class and an agriculture class, and it's a class about good TV series, because before the year had Vern chilling up from Oz. Oftentimes, strategy of the aggressive players just to make you angry, just don't try to listen to these players. So one thing people don't do too often, and I think it's a valid strategy, is just to mute players. So I had a game. It's a long time ago. I'm an old guy. I played in the King of Catan Premier League. I played against Ionut, I played against Trichosaurus and Koza. Not sure who knows these kind of names anymore. But Ionut and Koza inside the game began to talk super aggressively against each other. Because they're both dominant players, and they just yelled at each other all the time. And me and Trichosaurus just couldn't trade at all, because they were just like yelling. And then we just mute the other two. We really just muted them and talk amongst ourselves, and that was way better, because then we could trade more. No one made us angry. It just felt like a better experience. Sometimes using text chat, if people yell in voice chat, also helps. That doesn't help offline, but from my experience, we have like Vamos in here now, Ebox, we have Biaki in here. I don't think there are too many super aggressive people in offline play, right? I had like one person in all of my German experiences, and she was more like the upset, aggressive one. Biaki. Yes, we did, and that makes people, of course, more angry. Yeah, it is super effective, because that makes them super angry. Of course it does, because that's their strategy. You just need to play a strong game with yourself, and then you can still win. And you can use these players against you. So I had another big game, one of my first big Catan semifinals ever. I played against Stevie Buddha and a guy called Andy Hansen, who's not in the scene anymore, who was like known as a super, maybe one of the most aggressive table talkers in the whole server. And these people just yelled at each other all the time, blocked each other, made them other feel bad, and I won this game pretty easily. because these people just went after themselves. And being a moderator, Catan champs, I needed to include the last one. If you get harassed, just report. Please do. There are also not aggressive players. For example, we have Bjarki in here. I would say Bjarki is the opposite of an aggressive player. I hope that's okay to say that. They sometimes don't talk a lot. They don't talk at all, but sometimes they also talk a lot. I would also call myself someone who's not super aggressive, but I maybe talk a bit too much on the Catan table because I just like talking. They want to seem like the nice guy, but some players, not all of them, some are just nice, others just try to be the nice guy to get better traits. So you also need to be wary of that. Even some people just say, hey, let's be friends, even though the traits only help themselves. The trait is mutually beneficial to each other. Yeah. That's the first thing I said in a lot of games. Can I be your friend? Oh. I think these players are also one of the people I like to play a lot against. And these players are players who... There's no real strategy. Just play good game. Hey, real great, by the way. You don't listen to their smooth talk. Be nice yourself. These players often despise aggressive players that maybe even block them a bit more. Just be a good one. And hello, A-Rod. So many people in here now. You've missed how to win in Catan, because now we are through all kind of character traits, in my opinion. Maybe Julio's right. I think non-aggressive players don't get blocked as much because they don't gain as much attention, and maybe therefore they can be more dangerous. So the big question in the end is, who should I be, right? Who should I be? So we all know we are living in society, and I need to get the quote ready, because I didn't prepare it. There's a sociologist who I always adored, who said, "Oh God, what? Okay, in German, the English version is not a real translation, so I can't use it. This player always said, hey, this professor always said, hey, we all play a lot of roles in society. And we don't only play one role, we play a lot of roles. And I think that is what I've learned here. To be a really, really, really good Catan player, you need to play a lot of different roles. If you have a lot of, I call them submissive player on your table, be the dominant player. If you have dominant players on the table, be the more relaxed, chill guy. If you have a lot of subjects on your table, just eat him. I don't know. You need to be super, super flexible. And you need to know what it means to be flexible. You need to, so one thing is, you always need to look into the eyes of your opponent, or into the heart of your opponents, and see what do they expect from you. And if you know what they expect from you, you can use the expectation to subvert and do something else. Yeah, Bjarki. I did play poker some time ago, but I think most of the stuff is also because I did sociology for so long. So that's also why I talk about not how to play in Catan, but who you should be and how to play against some people. Yes, eat bird. Yes. And what did we learn from this class? I have 3 slides for learnings. I think there's no perfect way to play Catan. Think that I made that pretty clear. So why did you even join this class? I don't know. Adaptation to opponents is key. Like we said, you need to play the players. I don't think it is as important as in poker, but it is super important that it's not something people think about a lot. And especially in offline Catan, from what I've seen, adapting to the table if you're an online player is super, super important. So I think I'm kind of lucky with my playstyle because I'm more of a nice guy person, and that's why people offline didn't hate me. But some people have it more difficult if they go to an offline tournament because they play a lot differently online. Um, Empathy and social intelligence is super, super important. You need to analyze your opponents, and if you're like super good before a big game, you learn about who are your enemies, study your enemies. So if you play like chess, for example, in chess on Go, which I played for some time, you often just play games and look at games your opponent plays to learn how they play, to adapt to their play style. And in Catan, you kind of can do the same. You know that Chulo always goes for development cards. You know that there are some players who always go for the longest road. You know that A-Rod always plays like A-Rod, for example. And if you know that, you can adapt to the playstyle. I had a recent talk, I don't want to talk about the strategy, but I had a recent talk with Austin, who won his Catan championship. There was Cities and Knights semi-final. And in this game, he had a game plan because he knew against whom he played. And this game plan worked perfectly in the end. He really told me, this is a game plan, A, B, C, D. And in the end of the game, he did A, B, C, D, and it perfectly happened what he envisioned to happen. Another learning for the people who really want to take away something from this class without saying this like my university professor or my teacher who just talk, and I didn't learn anything. Against less experienced players, try to play consistent is super important. So don't do any weird strategies. Against weak communicators and less dominant player, you need to try to reason with them. Don't only be aggressive, but tell them, hey, I think this is the reason why doing this move is good, because then they believe you. Then you sound smart. Losing my voice. Try to not make an enemy of aggressive players. Like, imagine you play a game and your enemy is Joshua Wright is always a good example. You just lose because he just will hate you. Don't table talk too much. I think it's super important to learn here. If you want to use table talk, only use it when you think it's worth it. Don't do it all the time. People get annoyed by it. I get annoyed by it a lot. Talk in a way that makes everyone have fun. And what is super important, extortion is used differently against different players. So there are some people who love the non-block for non-block deals, for example. If you know before that, just do that. If there are people who hate extortion, don't do it. If it's because it just wastes everyone's time. And the last learning is Sachin. I think that is my favorite learning for today, because that is a nice bird. He went to sleep like 10 minutes before the class started, and I want to show him that. I love this. I just love how this bird looks. So, you know what I want to show you? We have next classes. This is not the only class. So if you want to learn more about Catan, and if you want to learn a bit more from players who are way better than me, who are way more accomplished than me, who are like big streaming personalities, big YouTube personalities, you can watch the next class in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, Ash Puppy is making a class about a really interesting topic you'll hear about soon. And afterwards, you have Makata Hatuna, or someone, Matata Kuna, I don't know how to pronounce that, who's also doing a great Catan class. So, thank you everyone for being here. I'm super, super happy that you've joined me. So many people have joined me. Think I'm nearly calling it quits now, but if anyone wants to talk to me, has any questions, or just wants to have a nice time, maybe play a game of Catan, I'll be in the Catan Championship voice chat in about 2 minutes and just play a few games, have a beer, have a gin tonic, and yes, having fun. So it's okay. It's okay. I'll teach you English, Shazang. So you know what we should do? I have a friend who's right now streaming, who's only speaking German. Uh, I guess we should just rate him before we go, and you then, oh the cat, and you just tell him that you love him or love beer or anything, right? Because that's something we all should do. So we rate a friend because no Catan streamers online. I would have rated a Catan streamer if they were online, but no one is. So let's go to a friend. And have fun. Thank you for joining. Everyone who watched this afterward, thank you for watching. If you have any questions, just DM me on Discord. Bye bye.